Hi, and welcome to the Exam Revision Saturday sessions. This is the geography session, Leaving Cert geography session. And in today's session, we're going to be talking about the optional part of the paper. Okay, so we're going towards questions 18, 19, or 16, 17, 18, part of the paper. And we're going to be focusing in on our biome question. Okay, and we're going to be focusing in on, for the purpose of this video, the tropical rainforest biome. Okay, so there are other choices in the course for other types of biomes, but the one we're going to focus on is the tropical rainforest biome, as it seems to be the most common one that students tend to study. So as I said, it's going to be the tropical rainforest biome. Our learning intentions from this particular topic are to gain an understanding of the four characteristics of the tropical rainforest, and to explore ways that plants and animals also adapt to the tropical rainforest biome. So this is going to be an important topic, as this will basically cover us for two questions with regards to the tropical rainforest. Okay, so there's two types of questions that can come up. One on the characteristics of the rainforest, and also one on adaptations. So in this way, we're going to be going through a number of different facets to the tropical rainforest, and that is going to give us the material and the notes we're going to need to basically put together an answer for those two particular questions. All right, so we'll get stuck in and get started. So the first thing that we need to look at is we need to see what exactly are biomes. So we need to have an understanding of what a biome is before we can begin to look at it in a bit of detail. Okay, so as I said to you already, the tropical rainforest biome is the one that we're going to be studying, but what is a biome in general? So biomes are large areas that have a similar climate, soil, vegetation, and where a particular type of animal also lives. There are a number of distinctive biomes based on a global climate, such as the desert biome and also the tundra biome that we find up further north in the northern hemisphere. The biome, though, that we are going to be studying is going to be the tropical rainforest biome. And the reason that we choose the tropical rainforest biome is that it has the most essentially to talk about, in terms of it has a huge amount of different types of vegetation, of different types of animals. So flora and fauna are hugely plentiful in the tropical rainforest biome. So there's a huge amount for us to discuss and get into. So we're going to go and jump into this in a lot more detail and discover where we're going to find tropical rainforests and what we find in them. Now, for the purpose of this study, we're also going to focus mainly on Amazon rainforest biome, as this is the biggest tropical rainforest in the world and has the most plentiful in terms of flora and fauna. So we're going to really focus our studies in on the Amazon rainforest in South America, and specifically with Brazil as well, because a lot of you will have studied Brazil in terms of your regions. So this matches in very, very well with your previous studies in terms of Brazil from your regional geography. So this map just shows us the different types of biomes that are out there. You can see that if you go along the equator, you see this essentially green area, okay? And in this green area, that is where we find the rainforest biome, okay? So you can see that it's plentiful, okay, in terms of, I suppose, in around South America, okay? We have a huge amount of it there, okay, especially in the northern part of South America, so covering Brazil, Ecuador, Colombia, places like that. Okay, we also see parts of Africa along the equator. Okay, parts of Africa have tropical rainforest biome there as well, and we can also find it in Southeast Asia as well, okay, where we find large parts of rainforest, especially places like in parts of Malaysia and in areas like that. Also, you will find small amounts of rainforest in parts of Australia, okay, but they would be very small in comparison to what we have, say, for example, in South America. All right. There are other biomes, as we said, all the different colors, as we can see here, denote different types of rainforest that you can find and discover throughout the world. So as you can see, there are many different types of biomes out there. But as I've said already before, we're going to focus in on our tropical rainforest biome because there is a huge amount to talk about in terms of the tropical rainforest biome. So we're going to focus in on that for our studies. So to get a bit more specific in terms of what we're talking about and to start looking in more detail on the tropical rainforest, we have a couple of basic points or facts that we need to know about, okay? So these are important facts that you might use at the start of an essay that you might be writing on this particular topic. So there are key points, key facts that we need to look at. The tropical rainforest, okay, is a forest of tall trees found in a region of year-round warmth. So therefore, right, because it's on the equator, the sun is always high in the sky. It's always got concentrated sunlight. It's always got a constant heat in around that area. So it has a year-round warmth. So temperatures won't change a whole pile in this particular area. And that's what allows this huge amount of growth of different plants and trees within a tropical rainforest. The fact that it is located so close to the equator. Okay, so that's why we find this particular biome in these areas. So we saw on the map previously, we saw that we found it in South America, parts of Africa, Southeast Asia, and that's where the equator runs. And that's where you're going to find this really intense heat from the sun. Also, as you can imagine, it's called a rainforest. So we're going to have a high amount of precipitation in these areas as well. And in fact, they produce most of their own rainfall through precipitation, okay, and from the rising heat basically from the sun. Okay, and we're going to be looking at that in a bit more detail in terms of how this happens. So the average precipitation or rainfall in a rainforest would be somewhere between 1,200 millimeters and 6,600 millimeters. So a huge amount of rainfall annually, okay, takes place here. Okay, and that's what gives it is name, of course, of the rainforest, and it produces, as I said already, a huge amount of its own rain. So we're going to be looking at how that happens in a little more detail as we go along further along the slides. It is also home to greatest variety of living things in the world. So you'll find a huge amount of different animals and plants and insects, more than anywhere else in the world. You go through a square kilometer rainforest, you will find more animals, more plants, more insects, okay, than anywhere else in the world. So it's got huge biodiversity. So a huge amount of living things live in the tropical rainforest and can be found within this area. So we've got many fruits, we've got many vegetables, we've got nuts, we've got drinks, we've got oils, flavorings, and other foods come from the rainforest. So a huge amount of foods and resources essentially are found in the rainforest. And as a result, it's very sought after area in terms of cutting down trees and trying to take a lot of these resources from the rainforest. And as we were going to see, of course, that is a huge problem at the moment in terms of rainforest, that it is coming under a lot of pressure due to illegal logging because of the amount of resources essentially that are found within the tropical rainforest, and it's going to be causing a huge amount of issues for the earth as a whole, if this is allowed to happen. So we're going to continue on. And again, we're seeing where in the world we're finding, this particular type of biome. As you can see, it's along the equator. Okay, it's in places like South America, even maybe parts of Central America. You've got parts of Africa, Southeast Asia, and then also Australia, which contain bits of rainforest that we're going to be essentially looking at in a good bit of detail. And as I said to you already, the equator plays a huge role in terms of producing this rainforest because of the heat that is there, and as a result, the rainfall as well. Okay, so the conditions that are needed to produce rainforest are found ideally along the equator line on the Earth. So, as we said already, okay, the climate and the equator plays a huge part in terms of the formation of a tropical rainforest. So, to be more specific, we need to look at what are the exact climate conditions that allow a rainforest to be developed. Okay, so the first thing is temperatures. So, I've already said to you that the conditions in terms of temperatures are pretty constant throughout the year. Okay, so the temperature rarely goes above 34 degrees Celsius and it rarely goes below 20 degrees Celsius, with an average of 27 degrees Celsius in these areas. So that's quite a constant heat, okay, which is ideal then when you couple that up with rainfall, it's ideal for growth. And that's why we've got a huge amount of growth of plants, of trees within this area. Also, the temperature range does not, okay, change a huge amount from one part of the day to the end of the day. So from the start of the day to the end of the day, or even from one part of the year to another part of the year. So the temperature does not change a whole pile. So there's a small temperature range. So we have a constant level of heat happening in this area. Now, the highest temperatures do happen between June and December, okay, because of the thermal equator. So that's when it's at its hottest. You're going to see your temperatures climbing up around that 30-degree mark, okay, but rarely above, as we said, 34 degrees. And as the tropical rainforest is close to the equator, the sun is always very high in the sky. And this means that the trees and plants are all growing up towards that sun. Okay. And as you're going to see, that's going to have a major impact in terms of how the rainforests grow and their formation and the different layers that we find within a tropical rainforest that we're going to discover. So this leads then, okay, because it's on the equator, 12 hours of daylight all throughout the year, every single day, 365 days a year. So 12 hours of sunlight every single day, which again is highly beneficial for growing of plants, of trees, and is why we see a huge amount of growth within this area. So if you think about in Ireland, when it comes to wintertime, we wouldn't get 12 hours of sunlight, okay, every single day. So this is a lot more constant. This is 12 hours every single day. So it's really consistent, okay, levels of rainfall, of temperatures, of heat, and then of daylight also means it's an ideal place for the growth of all these things that we're going to find in a tropical rainforest. Okay, as well as that, it's a hugely humid place. So there's a huge amount of water in the air, as we know from it being called a rainforest. So humidity is between 77 and 88%. So you're talking that heavy, heavy heat, which you find within a rainforest. Okay, so difficult conditions to survive in for humans. Okay, and also then is going to, of course, lead to a huge amount of rainfall. Okay, so as a result of this high humidity, it is due to a high rate of evaporation. Because you can imagine that constant sunlight, that constant heat that we find within the tropical rainforest, that's going to lead to evaporation of all that water that is produced from the trees and shrubs and plants that are in the tropical rainforest. And this is then what leads to a huge amount of rainfall. And as I said to you already, this is why the rainforest produces a huge amount of its own rainfall. So constant cloud cover also keeps this humidity high. Okay, so you're keeping this humid, hot conditions stuck in this particular area. So as a result, as I said to you already, this leads to precipitation. So every afternoon, there's heavy convectional rainfall. So again, this is all due to evaporation, rising heat coming up through the air. And as we know that this convection rainfall is a very heavy sort of rainfall, it can come down very, and basically water come down in huge amounts, and also can sometimes lead to thunder and lightning. Okay, so we're saying, as we said already, and we said this fact, and these facts are important when it comes to you writing your answers. We're talking about 1,200 to 6,600 millimeters of rainfall per year. So a huge amount of rainfall in this area due to these humid conditions and due to the high rate of evaporation. So 50% of precipitation comes from its own evaporation and transpiration. As I said, so half of its own, right? Half of the rainfall in this area comes from its own precipitation, or happens from its own evaporation and transpiration. So it produces half of its own rainfall. And that's very important in terms of the tropical rainforest, is that this is how important it is for actual global weather systems. So if you were to get rid of, say, the Amazon rainforest, this would have huge knock-on effect in terms of the amount of rainfall that we have even around the world. So, for example, if we didn't have the Amazon rainforest, if you cut all that down, it would lead to huge amounts of drought in parts of the United States of America. For example, Texas would suffer from huge and devastating droughts if the Amazon rainforest wasn't there. So not only does this rainforest affect its own climate, right, in its own area, but it actually has a global effect, okay, as well. Now, convectional thunderstorms form in afternoons, leading to high amounts of rainfall, as we've already said, very heavy rainfall, and then also, as I said to you already, can lead to thunder and lightning as well. Now, because of the climatic conditions, as we've seen in terms of the heat and the rainfall in a particular area, in this particular area, it's going to lead to a huge variety of vegetation. So as I said and alluded to already, there's a huge amount of different trees and plants that are found in this particular area, probably more than in any other part of the world or any other biome in the world. So the three largest rainforests, as we've seen already on our maps of the world, are found in South America. In terms of the Amazon rainforest, they're found in parts of Africa and also in terms of Asia. And each of these different rainforests has a different plant group and different animal species. So you can find different types of animals and plants basically on the three different continents that have the rainforests. However, the plant species look very similar and sometimes may only be distinguished by their flowers. So they look very similar, and you would think they're the exact same, only for maybe small, minute differences, okay? But the typical trees that we're going to be looking at, especially in the Amazon rainforest, are going to be those hardwoods, okay, that go for a lot of money, okay? They're very expensive, and that we see being sold for a lot of money as well. And maybe this is another reason why the Amazon rainforest is under a huge amount of pressure from logging and stuff like that. And these trees would include teak, they would include mahogany, they include palm oil, which is a huge reason for a lot of cutting down on trees because it is used in a lot of products such as chocolate, shampoos, things like that. And even there is a bit of a campaign on for people to stop using products that have palm oil in them, because of the fact that there's a huge amount of rainforest being cleared to grow this palm oil. And then also, especially in South America, we have the Brazil nut trees as well. All right, so these are the types of trees that you're going to find within the rainforest that we're going to be looking at. And it's important that we have knowledge of these different plants and different trees that are found there. So this brings us to the fact that a rainforest is going to have 4 distinct layers of vegetation. So when we look at a tropical rainforest, the first thing you're going to notice is how high up the rainforest goes. So a lot of trees are very tall. And the reason for this is that all this vegetation, all these trees are in competition with one another. And what they're in competition for is sunlight. So as I said to you already, there's 12 hours of sunlight every single day, which obviously helps the growth of trees and plants. But if you are growing against another tree that's above you, it's putting you in the shadows and they're getting all the sunlight. So all these trees are in competition with each other and they're trying to grow as tall as they possibly can in order to reach the sunlight. And as a result, then it leads to very, very tall forests. And as a result of this, this has led to our four distinct layers. So at the very bottom, we've got our forest floor, which as you can imagine is very dark because of the huge height that the trees are growing to. Above that, you've got your understory. Above that, you've got what is called the canopy. And at the very top, we call it an emergent layer. Now, these are the four distinct layers. We're going to have to look at each of these in a little bit of detail. We're going to need to look into what can be found in each of these four different layers and basically have a knowledge of each of the four. Because again, this is going to be important if we're asked about this in a question. All right. So we're going to look at each of these four distinctive layers in a good bit of detail. So this is what the four different layers look like. In terms of a sketch. Okay, so this is a basic look at it. This would be an important sketch for you, okay, to practice to draw. Obviously, it doesn't have to maybe done in as well of detail as what's here, but if you could draw this sketch at the end of a question on your tropical rainforest biome, it would look well and it might get you a couple of extra SRPs, as long as you have each of the different layers of the rainforest labeled on your sketch. So for example, you can see at the bottom there, we've got our forest floor. Above that, then you've got your understory. Higher up, you've got your canopy. And at the very, very top, we can see there, we've got the emergent layer. So again, this is an important sketch for you to maybe practice and to put at the end of your question or your answer to the question would be quite important and can be used in a number of different biome questions as well. Okay, so this would be one I would say to you to learn, to draw, and to have ready to put at the end of your biome answers. Okay, no matter what the question is, it's a good one to put in. And as I said, it might get you an extra couple of SRPs, okay, which are so important to us. So that's what it's going to look like. So we're going to have to basically look at the details of each of these four layers. So what do we find in each of them? Okay, and what's happening in each of the different layers as we see them there in front of us. So the first one we're going to look at in a bit of detail is going to be the forest floor. So as you can tell, and as we've seen in the diagram previously, this is at the very bottom of the rainforest. And as we can see here, it is teeming with animal life, especially insects and spiders. And what the reason maybe why it's so busy with different types of animal life is the fact that it's that bit darker and it's a lot easier maybe for this different types of animal life and insects to basically camouflage themselves from predators. So it is very, very busy in terms of all this type of animal life and insects and spiders and things like that. The largest animals also generally live here. So you're talking about gorillas, you're talking about anteaters, who are obviously looking for those ants and insects that live on the forest floor. You're talking about wild boars, tapirs, and jaguars. So a number of different types of animals, larger animals, also will be found here close to the forest floor. And again, they will use things like camouflage to aid them in this part of the forest. Also, we've got indigenous people that may also live here, especially in parts of Brazil, although a lot less than what were here before, unfortunately. So before European colonists came along to South America, we would have had millions of these indigenous people living here within the rainforest and on the forest floor. But due to colonists coming along and also spreading diseases that they brought from Europe a number of centuries ago, a lot of these people unfortunately have died out. The largest such group would be the Yanomami people found in Brazil that still use their traditional way of living within the tropical rainforest. This part of the forest only receives 1%, even less than 1% of the light that strikes the top of the rainforest. So, in terms of growth and things like that, it's a lot harder for plants to grow at this part of the rainforest due to the fact that it's not getting much sunlight. And this has had to lead to a lot of adaptations in plants in order to survive, okay, as we're going to see. So as a result, few plants can actually grow here on the forest floor because it does not get all the sunlight. So it's relatively easy to walk through then for us because we don't have all those plants growing in this particular part of the rainforest. Topsoil is thin and is also of poor quality. Okay, so the soil, yeah, there's a huge amount of growth within the tropical rainforest, but the soil in general, which would be a ladder soil, a red soil, found at the bottom of the forest floor, it's thin and it's not of good quality. It relies a huge amount of falling plant litter from the trees and plants that are in the rainforest to actually keep it fertile. And in fact, when you cut away the trees and it's not getting this plant litter, it's actually very, very infertile, okay, and it's not very good for growing of crops or anything like that. So that's why when say in parts of Brazil, when they cut down all this rainforest for branches and stuff like that, it takes a huge amount of fertilizers to actually grow any sort of grass or crops on this land, and sometimes land even just gets abandoned. So it's another downside of cutting down the rainforest in this area. So again, thin, poor soil, very quick nutrient cycle. So for example, the plant litter will turn to what's called humus very, very quickly, which is basically what keeps the soil fertile. That happens very quickly. So as a result, the plants and trees in this area have to be very, very quick in terms of getting access to these nutrients. And if they don't get access enough, basically nutrients will be gone. So it is quite difficult sometimes for plants and trees to actually survive due to this particular soil. So as we said, there's a huge amount of leaf litter that is required, plant litter that is required to keep this soil nutrient rich. So a lot of leaf litter falls on the ground where it is quickly broken down by termites, earthworms, and fungi. So as I said to you already, it's got a very quick nutrient cycle. So basically, this leaf litter turns very, very quickly into humus, into nutrients that is needed for the soil. So the heat and humidity further help break down the litter. So a combination of all these termites, earthworms, okay, as well as the heat and humidity mean that this nutrient cycle happens very quickly. So that's the reason for that. Say it would not happen, say, as quickly as in Ireland. The plant litter is a lot more slowly broken down, whereas in, say, the Amazon rainforest, this happens a lot quicker. So this organic matter, or humus as it's called when it gets broken down, which is basically a black jelly-like substance that the soil needs to keep it fertile, is then quickly absorbed by the tree's shallow roots. So the trees have actually adapted to the fact that the nutrient cycle is very quick and the fact that the soils are very, very thin by keeping its roots very close to the surface of the soil so that they can soak up those nutrients really, really quickly before they're gone and before they're washed away, say, by the rainfall in the Amazon rainforest. And basically, that's what keeps them healthy and keeps the trees growing upwards. Okay, so it's a clever adaptation by the trees in order to survive in this particular biome. Now, if we move on, okay, so we're moving on from our forest floor, we're moving up into the understory, okay? So this is also a dark environment. We are a little bit closer, obviously, to the sun, but it's still a lot darker than the further up areas in the rainforest. And this is located under the canopy of the rainforest. Again, there's limited plant growth due to the fact that there's lack of light coming through from the two top layers. So as a result then, we've got short, leafy, mostly non-flowering shrubs. We've got small trees, we've got ferns, and we've got vines, or what are called lianas. And these have all adapted to filtered light and also the poor soil that we have here. Okay, so these different types of plants that we do see in the understory, they've had to adapt to the conditions that are in the understory, such as the lack of light. So things like the vines, as you see there, lianas as they're called, these are basically different, they're type of kind of what we call a parasitic plant that actually hang on to the trees and use them to hitch a ride closer to the sun and to basically leach off the trees that can reach the sunlight for their nutrients. And we're going to be maybe looking at a little bit about that in a bit more detail. We also find animals, insects, spiders, snakes, lizards, and small mammals that live on and in the tree bark as well in this particular part of the rainforest. And some birds live and also nest within the tree hollows in the understory area of the rainforest. Some larger animals, like jaguars, do spend a lot of time in the branches in the understory looking for prey. And again, the jaguars would be using their spots to try and camouflage themselves within the understory and then to obviously trap their prey by looking down on the forest floor while they're up in the understory and using that as a way of catching prey. Okay, so there is a good bit of life in the understory still, despite the conditions that we see there. It's when we get up to the canopy that we start to see a lot more life, okay, and a lot more shrubbery, a lot more leaves, a lot more greenery. So the upper parts of trees are in the canopy, which grow just below the emergent layer. So as a result, we see a lot more sunlight in this particular area, so a lot more growth can happen. We're talking at this stage that we're about 20 to 40 meters above the ground. So we're very high above the ground at this particular point. And at this particular point, you have a leafy environment that's full of life. So you've got lots of insects, different types of insects, different types of spiders. You've got all sorts of different birds, like the toucan, which you might have seen in old Guinness ads. That was the bird that was used. So the toucan has a colorful beak. You've got mammals, like different types of monkeys, okay, that can be found in this particular area. You've also got different types of reptiles, and you've also got amphibians even in this particular part of the canopy, 20 to 40 meters above ground, which is unbelievable. But this is where the most food is. This is where the most leaves are. So it's why it attracts so much of these different types of animals. Plants also include the snake-like vines that we spoke about before, that are basically parasitic plants that hang on to the trees and hitch a ride up as they grow to get to the sun. And also what are called epiphytes. And these are air plants. And these air plants are very different in terms of the roots hang down off the branches in the air and they soak up the moisture that's within the air and the nutrients are soaked up from the tree. So they're a bit like a parasitic plant as well. Okay, so epiphytes like mosses, lichens, and orchids, which grow on trees as well. And they're all found and can be found in the canopy area again of the tropical rainforest. Once we move up to the very top then of the rainforest, we're up 40 to 80 meters. So again, we're up a huge height at this particular stage. Okay, so the tops of the tallest trees are 40 to 80 meters high. And these again contain birds like the scarlet macaw, insects, and also many other creatures. Trees are spaced far apart so that they're not competing with each other. This is the big thing, that the trees are actually spaced apart so that they're not competing for the same nutrients and sunlight. It gives them a chance to basically grow. And they have umbrella-shaped outlines. As they are exposed to drying winds, they tend to have small pointed leaves. So again, the trees adapt to where they are in the rainforest. So because they're up very high, there's a lot of winds, drying winds. If they were larger leaves, wider leaves, then they would probably break and fall off. So they have adapted to have pointed leaves, smaller pointed leaves, to be able to live and survive in this emergent layer. These giant trees have straight, smooth trunks with few branches at this particular point. And the shallow root system with buttresses can spread out a distance of 9 meters. So these trees have what are called buttress roots. These buttress roots are kind of big, chunky roots that stick to the top of the soil. They don't go deep, as we know, because the soil is very thin. So all the nutrients are at the very top of the soil. So as a result, then the root system stays close to the surface. And that's why they have these buttress roots, and they spread out a distance of 9 meters, so they cover a lot more distance so that they can try and get in that basically get in more nutrients, okay, that might be available further out from the tree. So 9 meters they basically spread. And as a result of all of this, as we've said, right, so we've got your 4 different types or 4 different layers to the rainforest. And as we've already kind of mentioned in a few different ways, there is lots of different adaptations, because basically, if you're an animal or if you're a plant, okay, to live in the 4 different areas they're all very, very different. So you've got to adapt and change to what the conditions are in each of those 4 areas of the rainforest. So many adaptations have been made by the rainforest plants to their environment. And these adaptations can be basically grouped under 3 headings. So there's been adaptations and changes made to their leaves, like we've already seen at the very, very top of the emergent layer with the smaller leaves, pointed leaves. Okay, but there are other adaptations further down as well that we have to look at. We've already looked at the roots and the trunks in a small bit of detail. So the roots and trunks have adapted to live in the different parts of the rainforest as well. And I've also mentioned to you already parasitic plants. So these parasitic plants have adapted to the rainforest to be able to survive, okay, by being parasitic plants, okay, by basically living off the trees, the other plants within the rainforest. So we're going to look at these 3 different headings in a bit of detail now. So starting with leaves and their adaptations to the tropical rainforest. So many plants have drip tips and grooved leaves. And this helps them to shed water quickly. And this obviously is a big advantage in the tropical rainforest, as there is so much rainfall, as we have seen. So you don't want leaves that are going to take on that water very easily, and as a result then can easily be broken or being dragged down by the water. So they don't get weighed down and break, okay, is the big benefit of having these drip tips and grooved leaves. So basically allows them to funnel the water off them and not get weighed down and break. Some leaves also have oily coatings on them, and this again repels the water and stops them getting weighed down. Also, to absorb as much sunlight as possible in the dark shrub layer or the forest floor, or even above that, the leaves are very, very large. So the further down you go, the leaves will get bigger. And the reason for that is they won't get hit with as much rain when they're further down because it's blocked off by the above layers. And also because of the lack of sunlight, they need to try and get as much sunlight as they possibly can. And by doing that, if you become larger, you're going to have a larger surface area that's going to be able to capture more sunlight. And that's how the leaves adapt, say, down in the forest floor, which is very, very clever adaptation for them to take. In terms of the roots and the trunks of a tree, many emergent trees grow very fast in order to capture the light. So again, as I said already, the trees are trying to get to the light. They're competing with other trees. So they're trying to get there as quickly as possible. So in order to help this, they may have buttress or stilt roots for extra support in the shallow, wet soils of the rainforest so that they can grow that bit higher. And as well as that, the roots, of course, do help them gather up more nutrients, as well as allowing them to be more stable as they grow up higher. Trees also have straight trunks that do not branch until a height of 30 meters or more, because there's no need to grow branches below the canopy where there's little light. So the trees know that there's no point growing branches lower down because there won't be enough sunlight to basically support them. So they wait until they get above 30 meters where they're going to be hitting a bit of sunlight before branches start to grow on the trees. Again, a very clever adaptation that trees make in order to survive in the conditions that are put to them. So here is an example of a buttress root. So these are the types of roots that we're talking about. As you can see, they're very large and quite thick. So they support the tree as they grow up to as far as 80 meters in height, which is very, very important. Also, you can see that they spread out over the floor of the forest. So therefore, they're going to pick up more nutrients. They spread out to maybe out around 9 meters, so they can pick up more nutrients that are on the soil surface. As we know that the nutrient cycle is very, very quick on the soil. So the roots have to be very quick and spread out in order to get all those nutrients that are there. So the majority of trees also have smooth, thin bark because there's no need to protect them from water loss and freezing temperatures. As we've seen, it's very constant heat within the tropical rainforest, so there's no need to be protecting themselves from those freezing temperatures. It also makes it very difficult for plant parasites to get hold of their trunks. So, for example, those lianas, okay, that we talked about before, by having that very smooth basically a smooth trunk, it stops them from grabbing hold or makes it a lot harder for them to grab hold of the tree and basically feed off them, okay, and take nutrients away from them. Many plants in the upper regions of the rainforest also have aerial roots, such as our epiphytes. And these basically epiphytes use the roots, they take in the moisture from the air. So that's how they get their water. And then they also take nutrients away from the trees that they're on. So their sponge-like layers gather water and soak it up for later use. Plants like orchids and ferns also have these types of root systems. They grow high in the canopy, and as a result, then the roots can never touch the ground. So they have adapted their roots to be able to survive up high in the rainforest. So again, another adaptation for plants, okay, and how they can survive in an area that they would not be as used to, okay, or in an area that has presented them with challenges. Finally, we've got our parasitic plants. And as I said to you already, parasitic plants basically live off another tree or plant. So parasitic plants live off the nutrients supplied by their host plant, or they might use them for support. Good examples are our vines and lianas. And lianas have adapted to the dark conditions on the forest floor by catching a tree and taking a lift to the light. The lianas start off as small shrubs that grow on the forest floor. As we know, you need to get up to sunlight to survive. So to reach this sunlight in the upper canopy, they send out tiny shoots that grab sapling or young trees. And then as the trees grow up and get bigger, the lianas are able to grab and go with them and then therefore take a ride up to the sunlight and feed off of the tree that they've grabbed hold of. So again, this is how these types of plants have basically adapted to the conditions that they see. This would be another type of parasitic plant. This is a strangler vine that essentially grabs hold of a tree, takes a ride up to the sunlight, and over time, the strangler vines can basically, as the name suggests, strangle a tree, take all the nutrients from it, and it can eventually end up killing the tree. Okay, such is the force with which the strangler vine can take nutrients and also basically hitch a ride up to the sunlight as well. The liana and young tree grow towards the canopy together. The vines can grow from one tree to another, and this can actually make up 40% of the canopy leaves. Strangler vines use trees as support and grow thicker and thicker as they reach the canopy, strangling their host tree, which eventually dies, as I've said to you already. Over 2,500 species of vines or lianas grow in rainforests. So they're a very, very common type of plant, of parasitic plant, and they are very successful in terms of what they do, as can be seen by the number of them that are found in the rainforest. Fibers from the tropical rainforest are used in rugs, mattresses, ropes, strings, fabrics, etc. So another natural resource that is found in the rainforest and that makes them very valuable to humans. So the tropical rainforest includes oils, gums, and resins are all found there. Insecticides, rubber products are produced from the tropical rainforest. We find fuel, we find different types of paint or can be made, varnish, cosmetics, soaps, shampoos, like I said, the palm oil contained within them, perfumes, disinfectants, and detergents all have base ingredients that come from the tropical rainforest and all come from the plants and trees that we see within the tropical rainforest as well. So here's just a couple of examples again of these different types of rainforest products. You can see the rubber in a tire on your car, the fibers in a rope, different scents for your perfume, vanilla. If you're going to have vanilla ice cream, the vanilla comes maybe from a tropical rainforest. Gum that you might be chewing, okay, ingredients for that come from the tropical rainforest. Your chocolate, okay, cocoa, palm oil again, okay, coming from the tropical rainforest. Cinnamon, okay, ingredients for soap, again, fibers in a basket, all contain ingredients that we get from the tropical rainforest. So you can see the importance of the tropical rainforest in our daily lives and how valuable it is to humans, okay, in terms of the natural resources that can be found within the tropical rainforest. Now, that's us having a look at all the different types of plants, okay, that can be found. But as we know, there are a huge amount of animals that can be found as well within the tropical rainforest, probably more in an area like rainforest than anywhere else in the world. It is estimated that a typical patch of rainforest measuring just 6 kilometer squares can contain as many as the following: 1,500 species of flowering plants, 750 species of tree, 400 species of bird, 150 species of butterfly, 100 species of reptile, and 60 species of amphibian. So as you can see, the rainforest has a huge variety of plants and animals that can be found. And again, more than anywhere else in the world. So this is how it's so important ecologically, the tropical rainforest, and why we should be trying to preserve it as much as possible because it is home to so many different plants and animals. This is an example of different types of animals that you can find in the 4 different layers of the rainforest. So for example, in the forest floor, you're going to find things like a tapir, maybe a snake like an anaconda. Further up, you might find in the canopy an ocelot or jaguar, an iguana, spider monkey or toucan. You've got the squirrel monkey above that, okay? And then you've got the very, very top, your hummingbird that can also be found in the emergent layer. So again, a huge amount of different types of animals, and they're just a small group of examples that can be found. So the animals of the rainforest, it contain more than 100 different species of animal in each hectare. The South American rainforest, particularly around the Amazon basin, contains a wide variety of plant and animal life, and a wider one than any other biome in the world. Many varieties of monkeys are found in the rainforests, and there's different areas of the same rainforest that have many different species. Insects make up the largest single group of animal that live in the tropical rainforest. We can find a huge amount of different types of insects. And these would include all your different types of butterflies, as we've seen, mosquitoes, ants, plus many, many more different types of insect that are also contained within this area. And as a result, then, it's a huge feeding ground for a lot of different types of animals because of the fact that there's a huge amount of insects. So we now need to look at the adaptations that animals take or do in order to survive in the tropical rainforest. So we've seen how plants have basically adapted to survive in the rainforest. Well, animals do also adapt as well. So they changed their camouflage or color in order to adapt. They can change their body structure in order to adapt. And we're also going to look at how there are animal-plant associations. So basically how animals basically survive off a particular type of plant to make their life better or to survive. So we're going to look at each of these three in a little bit of detail now. In terms of camouflage and color, looking like a leaf is very effective in the tropical rainforest. Forest floors are scattered with dead leaves, so it's easy to blend in and hard to be seen from above if you look like a dead leaf. Moths and tree frogs use this method in order to survive. Also, other animals, such as the jaguar, have spotted coats, and this is to blend into the shaded forest so they won't be as easily spotted by their prey when hunting. So again, clever adaptations by both prey and hunters in order to survive. So here we have an example of the jaguar sitting up in the trees, okay, and basically camouflaging into the area behind them so that they're not as easily spotted. In terms of body structure, a flying squirrel have developed flaps of skin between the front and their back legs to allow them to jump between trees and then to glide for longer distances than they would normally be able to leap. So they basically glide through the air. And this allows them to get from one tree to another and move throughout the forest. So again, a very clever adaptation. Having a tail that you can wrap around a tree branch, a prehensile tail, is also a very useful adaptation and is seen in such animals as lemurs, and then of course in different types of monkeys as well, which means that you can go from branch to branch or vine to vine a lot more easily, and you are a lot more stable in the higher areas of the rainforest. Also, there can be warnings or maybe signs that you're poisonous to predators that can warn them off. So animals also use color to warn predators that they are poisonous. Some of the brightly colored animals are just bluffing. They're not poisonous at all, but their colors warn off predators from eating them. The poison arrow frog, though, is certainly poisonous. It comes in many different colors, from sky blue to black and green. And if eaten, they will kill their prey, or they will kill their hunter even. Sloths are covered with a greenish layer of algae. This is why the sloth moves so slowly, in order that it gets covered in this layer of algae. And this camouflages their fur even in their tree living environment, their arboreal environment. And this basically stops them being hunted because they're not easily spotted. And they're very slow moving, which then also makes them harder to spot as well. So a benefit to being lazy and slow, the sloth is showing it there in the rainforest. We've also got plant and animal associations. Animals and plants have a close relationship in the rainforest in order to depend on each other to survive. And animals depend on plants for both a home and for also food. Plants depend on animals to fertilize and also disperse their seeds. So it's a mutual relationship for both to thrive and survive. For example, the ceiba tree is covered in vivid red flowers that attract many insects and also hummingbirds, who drink the nectar, collect pollen, and fertilize the tree. Some species of frog live only on one species of tree because they've adapted to live in that tree, and they can benefit from living in that particular type of tree and have adapted to do so. In terms of soils in the tropical rainforest, the ladder soil is the zonal soil associated with the tropical rainforest biome. As we've said already, it is very poor in nutrients due to constant leaching. And as we know, leaching is from constant rainfall dragging the minerals and nutrients down through the soil and robbing the soil of its minerals. So as we know, there's a very, very quick nutrient cycle, so that the roots of the trees and plants have to be very, very quick. As a result, the rainforest has a very short nutrient cycle due to the heat and termites that break down the plant litter so quickly. Nutrients are mainly found in the living plants and layers of the decomposing leaf litter on the surface of the soils, which we call the O horizon. Decomposers, such as insects and bacteria, make quick work of converting dead plant and animal matter into nutrients, which the soil needs to keep it fertile. And it does this very quickly and very efficiently. Plants absorb these nutrients the moment they are released. 99% of nutrients are held in the root mats of the forest floor. And when a rainforest is cut down or burned, the nutrients are removed from the ecosystems. This is where the negative part of, say, slash and burn techniques or cutting down a forest by humans is you're basically taking all the nutrients away and all the usefulness of them. The soil is then destroyed in the rainforest and can only be used for a very short time before it's completely depleted of all its nutrients. So there are all the different characteristics of the tropical rainforest. We have looked at plants, we've looked at animals. First thing we looked at was climate, and we've looked a bit there in terms of soils. Those 4 characteristics are all going to be very important, as they could come up in a question which asks you about the characteristics of a tropical rainforest biome. And you may also get asked about adaptations, plants and animal adaptations, how they change to live within the tropical rainforest. That has also been covered in this session as well. So these notes should be very helpful for you when you're going to put together an answer, and should be used in order to put together your SRPs in order to get the full 80 marks in that question. So hope you found this session helpful to you.